What is going on, everyone? We are here with episode 9 of the Longball podcast, the off-season edition. And of course, we are wrapping up the off-season by going over the off-season analysis and recaps for all 30 teams. Obviously, last episode, we did the American League teams. And of course, we are back for this episode with all of the National League teams. Of course, there was plenty news going on around the MLB. Manny Machado extension and all of that great stuff. We will be talking about that. However, that will be at a later episode. These two episodes are really just sticking to the AL and the NL offseason moves. That is a ton of great stuff. I appreciate everyone for tuning into the stream or whatever platform else this is being recorded on and live streamed on. So definitely appreciate you guys for tuning in on that stuff. And I'm going to pass the microphone to my companion, Blake. So, Blake, how are you?
I'm doing good, dude. I mean, off the air, we just talked. I'm not doing the greatest. I'm on like 30 hours of no time last night. It was actually my worst enemy. But yeah, we're here. We're rocking. Just watched our two teams battle in spring training today. Outcome didn't matter, but it was just fun to watch baseball. Regardless, Braves did get the 6-2 victory, though, for those that are wondering. But we see you guys in a couple weeks, so you guys can easily get your spring training revenge, because that matters so much, right? So yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll. For those that are wondering, we're going to be going alphabetical this time for the National League. So starting with Arizona, the Cubs, Cincinnati, Colorado, and therefore and whatsoever. A point I do want to make, since Hayden and I are Braves and Mets fans, we are going to put those two teams at the bottom of the chart, with the Mets being the last, being that they did more this offseason than the Atlanta Braves. But yeah, other than that, we'll talk about the Gavin Lux ACL tear, which is really unfortunate, the Machado extension when we get to those teams here in just a little bit. And yeah, we're going to start things off. Hayden, I'm wondering if you have the document surface open with the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'll let you have the honors.
All righty. Yeah. So the Arizona Diamondbacks, a team that, is looking very interesting is the term to use. And I know I use that term a lot for baseball teams, but it is. You look at this Diamondbacks ball club. You look at this Arizona Diamondbacks ball club, and we saw last year they won 74 games and lost 88. So, by far means that's not anything too great. But considering the fact that this is a team that only won 52 games just a year before in 2021, that's a pretty big amount of improvement. So what is it? What did I say? Like sure. 74, and then what was it? 52. So, I mean, that's a 22-game win difference in a year. That's pretty darn good. I don't know. I can't name many other teams that have done that throughout their history. I mean, obviously the Mets last year, but, it was a different case, I guess, to an extent. But, yeah.
Money.
This is a Diamondbacks team that is really, kind of just coming in and, trying to fire on all cylinders, and as they should. This offseason, they didn't really add a whole lot. I think they could have added a little bit more. I think they did, yes, have a little bit of an underrated offseason, but considering where the division is right now, we'll talk about that in a sec. But obviously, in terms of the free agent add-ons, they added right-handed relief pitcher Miguel Castro and right-handed pitcher Scott McGaw. Cool. So kind of just going after some bullpen, not too crazy. They also did add Kyle Lewis. They traded him in a trade with the Mariners, in which they got rid of Cooper Hummel. So Kyle Lewis, another guy, and a very underrated ball player, won Rookie of the Year in 2020 for the American League. It was a small season, looked great. Didn't really play much in 2021 due to injury. And, last year, same thing kind of went. He missed some time, sitting on the IL. And then, when he was on the field, his stats were kind of just nothing too crazy. He looked like an average player. But, we'll see. He could come into this year, opening day, and just be hot and ready to perform in the outfield and offensively. In terms of the guys they lost right-handed pitcher Ian Kennedy and right-handed pitcher Zach Davies. So, for a team that, is a small market team, a cheap team that definitely relies on some of that pitching, The Diamondbacks are a team that have some pretty good guys. Some of those guys, Zach Gallen, definitely a very under the radar, underrated pitcher in baseball. I mean, I think he could easily win Cy Young, but that's a story for another day. Diamondbacks, like I said, I feel like they could have done a little bit more. I wish they did a little bit more, considering where that division is right now. The Padres are only getting better. The Dodgers projections are really not liking them very much. I saw one projection today where they were 10 games above 500, and that's crazy. I get it. The Dodgers made a lot of subtractions, this offseason and last offseason. I get it. But
they got a farm system though. Like they're gonna figure it out.
I agree with you, and I still do think the Dodgers are the best team in the NL West. But are they going to win 100 games or something? But that's a story for another day. So you got the Dodgers, you got the Padres, but right now the Giants, are kind of in an interesting spot. The Rockies are not really doing much. They could easily, fall into that third place team. And, we see the expanded playoffs. So, I'm kind of upset that Diamondbacks didn't really take that opportunity. You won 22 games extra over the past year. What good is 10 more? So, honestly, a little bit of a disappointing offseason for the Diamondbacks. I'm probably going to give them a D+.
This article was a little old. So, they actually have made extra moves since the writing of this article that I'll inform you on, and if you want to change your grade, feel free to do so. They brought in, of course, what's his face? I was just looking at his name 2 seconds ago. Oh my goodness, Evan Longoria. Holy crap, that's embarrassing. Brought in Evan Longoria on a 1-year deal. They also brought in Andrew Chafin on a last minute deal, being that he has a lot of roots in Arizona. They got a trade done with Lourdes Gurriel for Dalton Varsho. So I really like that move, pairing them with Kyle Lewis in the outfield. Also got a pickup from Diego Castillo and your boy Miguel Castro, as you talked about. And they also were able to bring back Zach Davies for another year. Honestly, I'm giving them a B- offseason. As you said, it is a small market team, and we talked about this before. I think they might have been the best bad team in baseball last year. If there was such a thing, the best bad team in baseball was the 2022 Arizona Diamondbacks. They had a couple 30 home run hitters. They had a couple pitchers that were Cy Young candidates. They had prospects coming up out the wazoo, guys like Christian Walker, guys like Seth Beer, guys like Alec Thomas. Other names kind of have to come up behind Zach Gallen eventually. It can't be him and Madison Bumgarner forever, whose contract is not looking the greatest out there in Arizona, but they're getting the most they can out of that guy. But yeah, dude, if they handle everything right this year and the Giants don't, I wouldn't be surprised if they were third place in the National League. But we'll save our predictions for another episode in the near future. But they might have another move up their sleeve. Like, I think they also brought back Mark Melancon, so their bullpen, for what it's worth, is not the worst thing in the world. They got some bench depth. A couple guys, prospect-wise, are going to come up this year. They're going to be a team that favors them, and the Marlins, I think, are going to be two of the teams that benefit the most by the balanced schedule. Teams that were constantly getting better every year, but so is their division. And I think that this year they'll be able to face teams like Kansas City more, teams like Pittsburgh more, and that will allow them more opportunities to win, because I think on paper, Arizona is really not that bad of a ball club as what people are still thinking of them as. So yeah, I'm going to give them a B-. I wish that this article was a little bit more up to date. So I'll keep an eye on the ESPN transactions for anything we look over as well. But yeah, for the Arizona Diamondbacks, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they had a fun little summer. That's for sure. Maybe they sell off at the deadline, but I mean, hey, I think those fans will take 4 good months out of them. The Suns might win a championship this summer. So anything's better than what the Cardinals are out there right now. Holy crap. That's going off the rails fast. Talk about Dansby Swanson's new club. Had some interesting words about the Atlanta fans this week, and I don't like it. I really don't like that he's trying to stir the pot. The Chicago Cubs, of course, the 2016 World Series champions, broke the 108-year GOAT curse. And honestly, they had a pretty solid offseason for themselves. Of course, their big addition was Dansby Swanson, poaching him from my Atlanta Braves. on a 7-year, $177 million contract. People saying, oh, maybe it's a little bit risky, a guy that's only had, projected two good seasons of WRC plus. I mean, he was on route for in 2019 before his injuries, but he finally showed the last couple years when healthy that he is that number one pick that people are talking about. He finally got the Gold Glove he deserved last year. His bat gets better by the year. There are some slumps throughout the season, and I think that's just because of how his swing pattern is. But ultimately, you're going to be getting a great clubhouse guy who's going to hit 260 plus, a guy who's going to hit you 20 home runs at the shortstop position, play Gold Glove defense, be a lieutenant of basically your whole infield. Now, the one thing that I don't like is they lost Wilson Contreras to the evil Redbirds. At least that's what their point of view is up in Chicago. And sorry if I sound foggy on tonight's episode, guys. Again, I'm on like 30 plus hours and no sleep. So if I sound a little sluggish, please keep that in mind. They also brought in Cody Bellinger on a 1 year prove it deal. See if throw stuff at the wall, and if it sticks and it fits, then maybe it works out for them. But then you got to worry about if he wants to stay there long term. Of course, behind Marcus Stroman and Kyle Hendricks, they also brought in Jameson Taillon, whose regime with the Yankees wasn't the greatest, but it wasn't terrible either. So good to see that he finds a new home in the north side. They also were able to poach Brad Boxberger, from one of their rival Brewers, one of the projects they've had the last couple of years. And before I hand it off to you, Hayden, I'm just going to double check that there's not any other big ones that were missing throughout the offseason. Edwin Rios, I mean, we've talked about him a couple times here on the pod. PCA looks like he's almost on the way up. Seiya's going to miss a little bit of time this year, but you like what you got out of Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson up the middle. Madrigal's it's kind of a prove it or lose it year for him. Hosmer and Mancini, that's an interesting combination at the first base side. You still got Patrick Wisdom for one more year. But I'll tell you what, Hayden, if this lineup still had either William Contreras or Chris Bryant, it would look so much better than Tucker Barnhart or Patrick Wisdom. Because the lineup altogether, for what it's worth, is not that bad. I think Bellinger's going to be better than I don't know if he's going to be this MVP level that he was a couple years ago, but he's not going to be hitting 180 in Chicago. Let's put it that way. With all the adjustments he's made and all the rule changes there is, he's definitely going to bounce back in a new scheme. I don't know if he'll be an MVP guy, but he's definitely going to have better numbers. For the comment, I'll get to that in a second. Honestly, if I'm a Cubs fan, I'm shooting to push down. The Red Sox got a catcher. We talked about them in the last episodes. Unfortunately, there will be no Red Sox talk tonight. But thank you for letting us know. For the Cubs, I'm aiming to push down Milwaukee. I think St. Louis is going to run away with that division also and win the Central Crown pretty easily at the end of the day. But if I'm Chicago, I'm not selling at the deadline. If I'm in the hunt, you got too many guys on short-term contracts to do this to your fans, to bring them all in just to throw them back out the door again. And I'm pushing to bring down Milwaukee. And if you do that, you have a chance to be in the top 6 on any given day. So I give the Cubs offseason also a B+. Hayden, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, the Cubs.
I'm sleepy.
You are good. Rant away. No, yeah, Cubs, honestly, in my opinion, had the most underrated offseason in baseball. I think there were a couple teams that have had a superior offseason, like the Rangers, like the Mets, like the Blue Jays. But I think the Cubs are a top 5 team when it came to the offseason. Obviously, like you said, big free agent signings of, star shortstop Dansby Swanson, the former MVP Cody Bellinger, Jameson Taillon, Brad Boxberger, Eric Hosmer, Wade Miley. They are guys that could bring a lot to this team. I get it. You lost Wilson Contreras. Unfortunate, but that's just how it's going to go. Like you said, imagine you brought back Contreras, be crazy. Because right now, I mean, really the only flaws at the Cubs is really the catcher position, in my opinion. Maybe a little bit of
like
first
Yan
base.
Gomes or Tucker Barnhart. It's 2023, and we're talking Yan Gomes or Tucker Barnhart.
Jason Hayward. I mean, a lot of Cubs fans are probably happy he's gone. They probably don't care about what the financial situation looks like.
He
Wade
looks good with
Miley.
the Dodgers.
And, otherwise, no one really too big that's going to have an impact with their presence not there. I really am impressed with what this Cubs team has done. No one, they called it quits in the offseason of 2021, where they just said goodbye Rizzo, goodbye Baez, goodbye Bryant, and then last year they kind of made it official by giving up everyone, and it was weird. Last year at the deadline, you did not get rid of Ian Happ, and you did not get rid of Wilson Contreras, and that was honestly the point where I'm like, are they maybe going to keep one of the two of Happ and Contreras, which they did? They still have Ian Happ, who I believe he had an all-star season last year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
And that kind of came to the point where I'm like, maybe the Cubs are gonna do some stuff this offseason, and they did. I get it.
You gotta pay Ian Happ though. Like at this point, pay Ian Happ. Honestly.
Yeah, as they should. They I agree. They should pay Ian Happ. But you got Dansby Swanson, great. You got Jameson Taillon to help out with that rotation, great. You also extended Drew Smiley. I just saw that now. Cody Bellinger. Like you said, is Cody Bellinger, and he what happened to Cody Bellinger? I mean, honestly, I think I'm going to do a video about that because there's so many questions. We all know just
him and Yelich put them together.
Yeah, we all know Bellinger, that launch angle swing, and then he had that elbow surgery, and it's just it hasn't been it for him. His power's gone down, strikeouts, everything is just not going his way. And are we going to see this 2019, 2018 MVP caliber Bellinger? I don't know. If you can get a sub 260, 270 average, 770, 780 to 800 OPS, 20 to 25 home runs, then that's a successful signing. It's a 1-year deal. So if Bellinger really comes in and just plays like garbage, goodbye. You have him for the year. If he plays great, next offseason, you'll be saying, come back, Cody. So, yeah, like I said, the Cubs are a very under the rated team. I agree with you. I think it's the Cardinals division still. The Reds are not really going to be doing much. The Pirates are not really going to be doing much. They're kind of exploring their young talent, so maybe give them 2-3 years. The Brewers, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if the Brewers started to sell at the deadline. We know Corbin Burns is very unhappy with his team. Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff. Yeah, Freddie Peralta, Brandon Woodruff. I don't know what the future holds for them with the Brewers. Offensively, they don't really have much. They're not a big offensive team. They rely heavy on their pitching and, mid to subpar offensive production. Yelich isn't his same. Otherwise, you don't really have a whole lot offensively. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Cubs make a push for that second place spot. I really wouldn't be surprised, and I think they're capable. Now, like I said, it is unfortunate that they're going to be seeing the Pirates and Reds less. But I think the Cubs will definitely be a second place team. So honestly, I'm very happy with what they did this offseason. They could have sold and continue to say let's continue to rebuild, and they could have just not got anything. They could have gave up Hack too. So because of it, I'm going to give them an A-. Call me generous, but they get an A-. Very impressed with now there is the possibility of being a playoff contender again. If I'm a Cubs fan, that's good news. So I'm giving them an A-.
And I think baseball is better when teams like the Cubs and the Red Sox are good, honestly. Just the fan base and the environment that the stadiums bring. Like those are two teams that's better marketed. It's more fun watching them on Sunday nights than it is the Dodgers and the Yankees every time. Let's also put it in that perspective. But a couple points we didn't even mention that were bright spots of the team last year. Christopher Morel is coming off a really good season. They don't know if they're going to be putting him back in the infield or the outfield, but some utility options there. They got two really good utility guys off the bench, and that's Zach McKinstry and David Bodie, who's been there for like 80 years. But two guys that if Nick Madrigal isn't the guy, I'm trading him at the deadline, probably no matter what. And you got as Lefty and Zach McKinstry, who you got in the Chris Martin deal. Him and Cody Bellinger are probably already hitting it back off, along with David Bodie, who is beloved in Chicago. The outfield, once Seiya Suzuki gets healthy. So, I mean, in the month of April, you're probably going to see an outfield that looks like Seiya and right. Well, no, because he's hurt. It'll probably be Ian Happ in left, Bellinger in center, and Morel and Wright. And then once Saya comes back healthy, because I think he's missing the WBC, he had some oblique issue in Cubby camp the other day. You got 4 nice outfield options there. Tucker Barnhart and Jan Gomes, one of them has to step up. We talked about McKinstry, Bodie, Madrigal. One of the backup catchers is going to be off behind the plate. You got Hosmer and Mancini. That's a nice little platoon. Horner, Dansby, we talked about. The bullpen is just something you can always add to. They had some guys that kind of came out of nowhere last year, so you got to think they kind of have some more of that up their sleeve. They still got guys like PCA, Hayden's former guy, high up in their system now. And the starting rotation, as you said, is really not that bad. Behind, you got Stroman, you got Jameson Taillon. I mean, Kyle Hendricks is probably a 4. And for what he's worth, that's a pretty good 4 to have. He's not what he used to be. But if Kyle Hendricks is going to be a 4 for a team that has a possibility of making the playoffs, you're doing something right. And, yeah, I'm wishing Dansby all the best, honestly. What's up, Gio? He says, hey, gents, what's going on, man? Hope you enjoyed your day. And if you saw the Braves-Mets game, I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't mean that in any rude way. But yeah, for the Cubs, I'm really excited to see what their season brings, Hayden. What about you? I think you're muted. Here, I got you.
Yeah. The Cubs are going to have a very interesting season. Like you said, I mean, I'm looking at their roster as we speak, and their rotation is much more talented. I don't know why I thought of that word. Is much more talented than what it was last year. I mean, last year they're throwing out
we're both
Justin Steele and whoever to start games, and there's a lot of guys on that roster on that pitching squad who I think is talented. I mean, obviously you have Marcus Stroman, you have Jameson Taillon, you have Drew Smiley. Javier Assad, he'll be an interesting guy. Well, and another guy I'm interested to see how he goes is Hayden Wisniewski. Not because we share the same name and we're both Polish, is because he actually had a small sample size last year in 6 games, but he actually put up pretty good. The metrics and the stats he put up were pretty good. And he's not really this huge pitching prospect that people are talking about, but debuted a little in September of last year, and I like what I saw from him. So I think Cubs could maybe, put him in this relief role, kind of like the Brewers, what they did with Burns and Peralta. Put him in the relief role and then release him into the rotation once he has the innings under his belt. So Cubs may do that, and I'm going to be in Chicago in June. I will be at the Cubs game in June, the 26th, 27th, something around that. It's Cubs and Phillies. So I mean, the atmosphere there is electric, so hopefully they're playing good. Go Cubs, go, baby.
So, final question. We also got to mention the rookie Keegan Thompson.
Okay.
I'm projecting this team to probably be, at best, a little over 500. If they had either Contreras or Chris Bryant, just one of the two, to plug in for either the catchers or Patrick Wisdom, would this team be a second-place lock, and could you see them near that 91 potential with one of those two guys on the roster?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, right now, Bryant, I mean, he's – what happened to him in Colorado?
He hasn't hit a single home run in Coors yet. Like, how?
He took the money. He's going to be stuck with the poverty franchise for the next 5-6 years. Even if by the end of his career again. Even if the Cubs had Baez, and I mean, listen, I know Baez isn't what he quite used to be, but even if they had Baez or at least half of what Baez used to be, or Rizzo, I still think they could be this near 90 win club. Obviously, I think Bryant would probably have the highest ceiling out of the 3 guys right now. But yeah, I agree with you. I think if they either still had Wilson Contreras or Chris Bryant, then they could probably win, 88, 89, 90 games just about. So it's gonna be a good year for the Cubbies.
I think that's a lot of Cubby talk. Now let's stick with the team that's right in their division. Deep rivals with them, the Cincinnati Reds. Hayden, it's up to you.
Yeah,
Luke Maile.
Cincinnati Reds, they had an incredible offseason. They got Luke Maile. Won the offseason. No, I'm being facetious. But,
He didn't have to go very far.
The Reds had a very unfortunate season. I mean, they started off at a historic low, but they started to pick up a little bit pace throughout the season. But still, just rebuild is crazy. In 2021 they were a winning ball club with a winning record, and then last off season, just before the season started in 2022, the owner said, you know what, forget it. Traded away Castellanos, Winker, and really the rest of the talent on that ball club. Their whole rotation is gone. Their outfielders, everything. I mean, the only guy that you really still got left is Joey Votto creeping around, and he's in his 38, 39 season age, of course. So he's not really what he used to be. Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Jonathan India isn't really. We'll see what he could do. If he could be healthy and do what he did his rookie season in 2021. Ailey De La Cruz prospect, he can get called up. But, in terms of the offseason, they didn't really do much good. They signed catcher Luke Maley. Obviously, in terms of subtractions, they lost their second baseman, Donovan Solano, and, of course, left-handed pitcher Mike Minor. In terms of some noteworthy trades here, it says Kyle Farmer went to the Minnesota Twins, and they got some prospects back. They got Kevin Newman. Or wait, am I reading that right? To Pittsburgh Pirates for shortstops, Kevin. No, they did not get Kevin Newman. My apologies. So, yeah, essentially they really didn't get anyone this offseason that I care about or that I actually know about.
Nick Solak's a good pickup.
Oh, okay, my fault. I thought it said they traded away, but then I was about to say, wait a second. Yeah, so yeah, no, I what you put in the chat. Yeah, that's pretty oof. Yeah. So like I said, the Reds are in their rebuilding process, but they're really not spending much. I mean, it's saying that the Luke Maley signing was they invested $1.75 million as a 1-year deal for a backup catcher. So sounds about right. So yeah, Reds don't really have much going on. Reds fans are kind of just waiting for football and Joe Shiesty to get on, and if they have any other sports that they are rooting for. So, right now the Reds, considering they're a rebuilding team, honestly, I'm just going to give them a D flat.
Is there anybody that we're looking at this roster and we're saying trade watch? Like these are gonna like the Luis Castillo type, where like those guys are gonna be shipped on. Like I don't think they're gonna give up on a guy like Tyler Stevenson. They haven't given up on guys like Nick Senzel yet, so that's definitely not happening. Joey Votto's a Red unless he ends up going to like Toronto for his last 2 months because he's a Canadian. I don't think there's any way he doesn't end his last couple months as a Cincinnati Red. I mean, I guess the big thing is they were able to clear up the Mike Moustakas contract, which was ultimately so terrible for them. That deal blew up in their face. So that was a very good positive for them. But if I'm a Reds fan this offseason, the prospect I'm most excited for is Noel Marte, the guy who they got in the Luis Castillo trade, the big shortstop prospect that was stuck behind J.P. Crawford in Seattle. And I think that guy's going to be able to come up and make some noise. I mean, he's going to be battling. It was formerly going to be Kevin Newman, but now he's going to be battling guys like Nick Senzel and Nick Solak for the position. Like, if the kid's hot, they're going to give him an opportunity, and that's going to be a hitter's ballpark. I mean, he should be able to make some noise if given the opportunity. But yeah, given the circumstances, I'm not going to give them an F, but I am going to give them a D for this offseason. I mean, I feel like you kind of covered it for the most part. They got a backup catcher, cleaned out the closet, Votto's. I mean, they still got Jonathan India, who had a bad sophomore year, but I mean, I think he'll bounce back in a better way this season. Hunter Green looked really good last year, and they lost Mike Minor, who I met when I was very little, but hasn't been good in the majors the last couple of years. Castillo's gone. Sonny Gray's gone. Bauer's gone. Of course, long gone. Yeah, man, this Reds team doesn't look at all what it used to like 3 or 4 years ago, and that team still couldn't really get to the playoffs for what it was worth. Took them in an extended roster, and they couldn't score a single run against the Braves. So that was very interesting over that wild card series. But yeah, I'm gonna give them a D, and I'm a Reds fan. Just know I love how we're starting to incorporate other sports into this show whenever we feel bad about our fan base. Like, hey, At least you got this, right? So at least they got Joe Burrow and company in the fall of RJ. If you're listening, that's your boy right there. And be excited for Noel V. Marte, Joey Votto. If this is his last year, he's going to get gifts from everywhere around the league that he goes. He's going to get farewell gifts, farewell ceremonies. And yeah, hopefully somebody comes up, Luis Castillo or Tyler Stevenson that you're able to maybe ship on for better prospects down the line. So that's what I'm rooting for if I'm a Reds fan. And also, let's beat up on the Pirates. Pick one team to latch onto and be the little douche to. And if that's me, I'm picking on either the Reds or you are the Reds, the Pirates or the Cubs. You gotta win the season series against them. And I think if those couple things happen, season success, because then Joe Burrow might win you a Super Bowl by the next offseason. So yeah. All right. So done with them. Another trash can here. The Coors effect. No more Arenado, no more Story, no more LeMahieu. Probably the end of Charlie Blackmon. We got the Colorado Rockies. And again, this article is older, but as of this time, when it was written, it gave the Rockies a B+. And I don't really understand why. They added reliever Pierce Johnson. What do reliever additions do for the Rockies? Nothing. It's Coors. You're going to have a 6 ERA, even on your best game. Germán Marquez should have been traded out there a couple years ago, and now his market has plummeted. They brought back Braves fan favorite Jose Urena, so that's great. They lost Jose Iglesias, Chad Kuhl, Carlos Estevez, Alex Colomé. I believe they still have Daniel Bard. They also traded Juan Brito to the Guardians for Nolan Jones. That's an interesting pickup for them. And, of course, they sent Sam Hilliard, one of their lefty, stocky infield or outfield platoon guys, to the Braves, who's in our camp right now. One thing I do have to bring to attention is how bad the Rockies owner has been this offseason. He's not willing to spend. Take it through the thought process, right? People were mad that he wasn't paying Arenado a second deal, so he traded him for a bag of chips. People were mad at what they got back for Arenado, and they were afraid that the same thing would happen to Story. So then they didn't even pay him Story, and they didn't even give him a qualifying offer. The dude left for Boston for nothing. Zero. So the owner is stupid in that regard, but then they had the audacity to speak to Rockies fans at a meeting this offseason and say, you know what? I think our team is constructed where we can play 500 ball. Excuse my language, but bullshit. You might be the worst team in the National League this year. I wouldn't be surprised if the Reds and the Pirates and teams like Washington were better than the Rockies. I really wouldn't. This team might be my early pick for 15th in the National League. And if that's the case, hopefully you don't get hoed by the lottery like Oakland was this year, because it's going to be one of those years where you're counting on it. Hayden, is there anything you'd like to add prospect-wise or players I didn't mention?
Yeah,
October.
It's if you're a Rockies fan, you're really upset. I mean, you really have no. You have a couple guys.
Rockies country. Let's rock.
That's right. I think you do have a couple
Rockies
guys
country.
that would be of talent. Whether that's obviously a couple guys in that pitching staff, reliever Daniel Bard, Denelson Lamet, Germán Marquez, Antonio Senzatella.
Denelson Lamet's been passed around like a prostitute.
I did not know that they picked up Brent Suter. That's an interesting one. Jose Urena, not really what he planned to be. Marlins prospect. Offensively, TJ Crone had a pretty big, year last year. He's a guy who mashes. A couple other offensive players. Randall Grichuk, Jonathan Daza. You have Chris Bryant. Charlie Blackmon's kind of up there in age, so he'll probably finish out his career there. And otherwise, you don't really have a whole lot. Really, just trade candidates, and the Rockies don't really have a big farm. Keep in mind, they traded away guys like you said, like Nolan Arenado, and they essentially got back, a peanut in return. I mean, Austin Gomber and what else? Well, what are they doing?
This.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the Rockies there, and it's crazy to think and it's crazy to think that their owner thinks that they could play 500 ball. One of the worst teams in baseball. I mean, if they weren't in Colorado, if they were in any other city where they didn't have the help. I mean, last year they went 68-94. I mean, what did you do this offseason to be able to play like 81,
To
80?
get better.
What did they do to get better? I mean,
Dude.
okay, maybe they'll have Bryant back on the opening day roster, but last I checked, one player doesn't carry the whole team's success. Honestly, the Rockies are bummed. The owner's a bum. They should sell it. The fans should just riot. No, they should, honestly,
Stay in Colorado, though. Stay in Denver. This is
with
an
the
A
Rockies,
situation. Yeah.
I'm giving them a D also. When it comes to these, small market, penny pinching owners who don't do anything, I'm just going to give them a D because it's like, I don't want to give you an F. I should give the Rockies an F. But at the same day, you're going to sign guys for what? You're going to sign 2 elite caliber guys and then have a whole roster of nobodies. So, it takes time to build, which they easily could do that, but they're not doing that. Look at the Cubs, for example. Great example with that. But the Rockies, I'm going to give them a D. There's nothing.
I mean, Sports City likelihood. You got Dion bringing back the Buffaloes, so you got that to look forward to. Hayden, I know you're a partial Broncos fan. I don't really know what to expect from the Broncos next season, if anything's going to be fixed. If not, they got a lot of holes to patch. The hockey team didn't just win the cup, though, so I'm sure they're still a little happy about that. I'm sure that team will be back in the playoffs this year, the Avalanche. And the Nuggets, I know you're not a huge NBA guy, Hayden, but they might win the West this year. They're in that contention with teams like Phoenix and Dallas and Golden State and that sort. So that a sports town that it seems like it's as you said, they're small markets, so it's hard for all of them to be good at the same time. I mean, the Broncos have a prestigious history. The Avalanche finally got theirs. The Rockies and the Nuggets are fairly new, so not a lot of winning for them. But Nuggets have won a lot more recently than the Rockies have. That's for sure. I mean, if you talk trade candidates, CJ Cron's probably a guy you're moving at the deadline.
Yes.
I see they already got rid of Connor Joe, so that sucks. I think everybody liked Connor Joe in Colorado. That's an unfortunate.
They just like the name.
I know it's just an unfortunate breakup, and they keep bringing back Bud Black. I don't think Bud Black's really the issue at all, so that's good to see. Garrett Hampson's back. Is this the year they finally trade Herman Marquez? And if so, like, are they going to be able to get a lot for him anymore with how the GM negotiates?
Probably not much.
Should have been like a 2019 thing. I guess they were in contention then. But, dude, that's so unfortunate for them, honestly. You said you gave them a D plus this offseason?
Just a D. D flat.
Shoot. We back? We good?
Yep. Yeah, just a D. Rockies get a D.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going. This is gonna be my first F, honestly, for the bulk honky that they're trying to pull in the meantime. But honestly, not a bad team to transition to. And Hayden, I know you and I will have a lot more fun enjoying talking about this team, the rival to the West within division, the powerhouse Los Angeles Dodgers. Had an offseason of losing, but they're not going to drop 23 games in the standings. They're still going to be right there with San Diego. Hayden, take it away.
Yeah, the Los Angeles Dodgers. Well, what did they do this offseason? I think they do a whole lot. I mean, you extended Clayton Kershaw, your left-handed ace, so obviously Dodger fans are happy with that. Otherwise, when it came to obtainments, you didn't really get a whole lot. You signed Noah Syndergaard. Okay, I mean, not really too optimistic there. And DH JD Martinez was getting in his mid-30s. Otherwise, the loss is where it really kills you. You lost Trey Turner, your elite shortstop that you traded so much for. So that Dodgers trade of trying to get Scherzer and Turner, you have nothing left. So everyone else, all the prospects you traded for,
the guys
killing on the Nationals. So
the guys from Washington haven't been good either, though. Like Josiah Gray has been, people of that sort.
Down the line, at least the Nationals can
Keep it Ruiz
have
has been okay.
but the Dodgers don't have anything. So you lost your shortstop, Trey Turner. You lost Cody Bellinger. You lost Justin Turner. You lost Joey Gallo. You lost Tyler Anderson. You lost Andrew Heaney. You lost Craig Kimbrell. You lost David Price. You lost Tommy Canley. And you lost Chris Martin. So, I mean, right now it comes to the point where, the Dodgers are an elite team. They still have a great lineup. They have an elite farm system. I mean, whether it's guys like Tracy Thompson or, whoever getting just called up and doing their job. We also did bring in Miguel Rojas to get the shortstop role. Definitely a big downgrade.
Which that trade looks a lot good now. It looks really good now, though, with the Gavin Lux.
It's definitely a downgrade. Obviously Gavin Lux, like you said, got hurt. He tore his UCL, so he's going to be out for this whole season. So, definitely, like I said, you got Miguel Rojas, to replace Trey Turner, but that's just a downgrade. And, teams, these elite teams like the Dodgers should not be making downgrades. They really shouldn't. So, obviously unfortunate to see that. Like I said, you signed Syndergaard 1 year, $13 million, decent pickup. Kershaw coming back 1 more year. That's a solid move. Mix him in with some of the veterans, Julio Urias, Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May. You have a couple guys waiting in the wing. So, yeah. Picked up JD Martinez 1 year, $10 million. Short-term deal as it should be. But, they still have a pretty solid lineup, I think, built around Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, Chris Taylor. We'll see what Max Muncy can get back to. But, yeah, I mean, considering the Padres are only getting better and, maybe the Giants could – the Giants made more moves this offseason than the Dodgers, and that's sad to say. The Dodgers spent a lot of their money the last couple years, and you're kind of seeing the cons of that. It depends on the franchise, of course. But, we saw, I mean, they gave Freeman this big term deal. Mookie Betts this big term deal. And, a lot of other guys. So now we're kind of seeing them.
Howard, too.
And okay, we got a lot of our long-term guys. We got a couple mid players. We got some cheaper deals, some prospects we're keeping an eye on. Let's just settle with how we are now. And I think the Dodgers are more than capable of doing that. So, interesting offseason, but I'm going to give them a C+.
I'm probably right in the same boat as you, and I think a lot of it is where you said the Dodgers being this 111 and 112 team win team powerhouse. And they're still going to win over 90 games this year, probably closer to 100. It's just that they're not as stacked as they usually are. And a lot of it is because they reset their luxury tax this offseason, which makes it easier for them to push for a guy like Shohei next winter. And we might be talking about how they're right back at it again. And people have been talking about for the last couple of years that the Dodgers have the number 1, the number 2, the number 3 farm system. Okay, well, we're going to get a chance to see it this year. They traded a couple pieces away in the Miguel Rojas deal. But yeah, the team, I don't know if it got, I know the Padres ended up beating him in the playoffs last year, but over 162 games, the Dodgers are still going to be good. And I don't know if the Padres are going to make up 23 games of ground. It's still going to be a close race. Down to the wire. I mean, you still got Mookie Betts and Will Smith and Freddie Freeman in your lineup. Like, as you said, hell, this team was good before they acquired Trevor Bauer for what he was supposed to be, Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. And they added them all in a single 3-year span, 1 per year. So ridiculous. And yeah, they lost some core guys like Bellinger and Justin Turner, and of course they lost Kike Hernandez a couple years ago. They lost some older bullpen arms, but rotation-wise, you're able to bring back Kershaw. I've talked about this before. I think last year was the Tony Gonsolin breakout. We could probably agree to that. I think this year is the Dustin May breakout. I think this is the year that he finally gets his spot, and I think this is the year where he finally solidifies things. He looks nasty so far in his couple spring training starts, so I'll put it that way. You still got Bobby Miller and Gavin Stone right there. They're going to come up. They're going to make impacts. They're going to make starts. They're going to look good while doing so. Like, those guys are going to stabilize it when they're there, and they're going to be good for the future. Walker Buehler is probably a no-no for this year, but you're going to get him back eventually of some form. He might be turning into the Mike Soroka for the L.A. People. Bench is still not terrible. You got guys like Trace Thompson and Austin Barnes off the bench. You'll probably have a prospect get called up to like a Horbert Vivas or like a James Outman off the bench every once in a while. I don't know if a guy like Trace Thompson will be able to redo what he did last year, but he's not going to be terrible by any means. There's a reason the Dodgers kept him around. Chris Taylor is a guy that's probably going to bounce back. Max Muncy, I'm not absolutely so sure on, but Max Muncy's only on a 1-year deal, so that's more of a fool's gold. They'll take what they can get out of him. So yeah, for the Dodgers, you said C+. I'm gonna go C+ as well. But I know their intent here. They're giving their farm system a chance. They're resetting their luxury tax. They know they're still going to be this 95 win team. And they're still going to be a very hard team to beat at home. They're always like 60-20 at Dodger Stadium every year, it seems. Very hard to win in that game. Very hard to win in Dodger Stadium. They seem to come back from whatever the deficit is. They win there all the freaking time. It's kind of suspect, in my opinion. But that's a story for another day. I think that they're resetting their luxury tax, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here at a team that just missed out on winning the NL West crown this year with Shohei Ohtani in their laps a year from today. You?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think the Dodgers right now are still one of the best teams in baseball, and necessarily do they need to go out every offseason and make these massive mega deals? The Dodgers are. I would say probably one of the 5 teams out there who have a large spending, who have ownership that will spend. But it's still going to be
Johnson's
a good
money, man. Oh, we're both taking drink breaks at the same time. This is awkward. But yeah, I really like the JD Martinez signing for them. For the price they got him at, I think that's a win-win. I think he will do very well there for a year, $10 million. Have some DH at bats, have some left field at bats if you need days where you need Muncy or Chris Taylor in the infield. Syndergaard is the next guy they're going to bring into their pitching lab, but if not, he's a 5 starter. That's not going to be terrible for them. So that's a whatever. Tommy Kahnle never really got his Dodger career going, and neither did David Price. Craig Kimbrell was just too far gone for them to fix. They got JP Feyereisen from the Rays. That's nasty. You still got Phil Bickford and Alex Vesia. They're 2 young studs out there, along with Brusdar Graterol. I don't know if it's Daniel Hudson or who it, and I know he's banged up right now, but they have somebody who's waiting in the wings to take that closer role. Evan Phillips. They really like Evan Phillips to be the closer for them this year. They say he has really good high leverage quality pitches, and Dodger fans would not be surprised if he was their guy. And it says in this article here that we've been basing a lot of information on, it says, quote, but it seems like the Dodgers are laying low this offseason in preparation to throw an outrageous amount of money at Shohei Ohtani in November 2023. Meanwhile, the Giants and Padres have made huge moves. Well, this might be an article where Arson Judge or Carlos Correa are on the Giants, have made huge moves this offseason to close the gap. I don't know if they have, but yeah, the Dodgers are still going to be a team that's in the playoffs, still going to be a tough out. We're not going to see them the same light they were the last decade. And Hayden, a lot of people forget this. They were like 56-40 at one point last year before they just took off. They were right there with the Mets and the Braves and the Cardinals for like number 1, and I guess the Brewers at the time before they fell off the board for the number 1, number 2 seed before they just freaking took off and rattled off like 27-33 and finished with like 111 wins. I'm surprised they got that much from how they started. But yeah, I think that's enough Dodgers talk for now. I can only take so much. We're going to move it to the south side. The other side of the Miguel Rojas trade is, of course, the Miami Marlins. The MLB The Show cover boy, Jazz Chisholm, moving out to center field, of course. Their big free agency loss was Brian Anderson. He goes to Milwaukee, who we'll talk about later. And ironically, the Brewers announcer is Brian Anderson, so that's ironic to see how that goes. Oh, my goodness, the Marlins made so many trades this offseason. I don't think there's really anything of elite measure here. I mean, they got JT Chargoy from the Rays. They traded Eliezer Hernandez to Hayden's New York Mets. He's just a guy that didn't really fit in that system anymore. The Marlins have so much pitching, and the starting pitching is the most precious thing in Major League Baseball. And they've had a plethora of it for years, and the ones that have stayed healthy have signified themselves as the guys, and the ones that haven't, they haven't moved on from. Guys like Sixto Sanchez, guys like either Yuri Perez or Max Meyer, the next guys that they're supposed to be nailing them as. Elias Hernandez is supposed to be really good. Jesus Luzardo has been so far. Trevor Rogers has been so up in the air. They finally traded Pablo Lopez for Luis Arias, but I don't think it's exactly what Miami needed. They needed more power in that big ballpark of theirs. They needed more power in that lineup. And Luis Arias is the opposite of power, to put it lightly. And Hayden, I'm sure you would agree with me. I mean, they were able to bring in some Latin players, and I wouldn't be surprised if they still got Yuli Gurriel or Jurickson Profar, who are still out there in free agency. I wouldn't be surprised if both those guys ended up on the Marlins roster by opening day. I was listening to John Boy Radio this morning, and he was talking about how the Marlins must have a fetish for J names. And that would be even weirder if they signed Jurickson Profar. Like, they traded JJ Bleday for AJ Puck. That's a really good move that helps their bullpen. They were able to kind of get youth in that position this year. But, I mean, if you go around the bases, like, dude, John Birdie, Jacob Stallings, Jesus Sanchez, Jazz Chisholm, AJ Puck, so many J's. It's a little suspect, and you add a guy like Jurickson Profar in the mix. So Skip Shoemaker, building something a little fishy down in the 305. I'm sorry for the bad joke.
I would say the Marlins had, intriguing offseason. I mean, free agency wise, didn't really do much, but in terms of trades, they got a couple good guys in some trades. They got Luis Arias from Minnesota. I think that's a good acquisition. Nice contact guy. He's great when it comes to hitting singles. He's not going to be this power machine, but he'll have plenty of hits, driving plenty of runs if you have runners in scoring position. So I think he's going to be a great, I think he'll do great at second base. Obviously, Jazz Chisholm will play center field, so we'll see how that goes for him. The other interesting trade that they got was AJ Puck. Obviously, they got him from Oakland Athletics. And, obviously, we know how the Athletics, the Rays, those Moneyball teams are. They got nobody guys, and they're elite. And I think AJ Puck is this, interesting ball player, kind of could be this Josh Hader type guy with, his arsenal and what he throws and his velocity. So definitely keep an eye out for him. He could potentially be trying to get that closer role. We'll see how the Marlins are going to handle their bullpen. Still a little bit shaky. The rotation is looking pretty good. Obviously, you lost Pablo Lopez. Made sense. He was kind of on the block for some time now. So Marlins are coming into the season. I think the Mets, Phillies, and Braves are going to be a much better team than them. I think the only team that they're really going to go after is against the Nationals. They're going to beat up on them, as I think many teams are. So the Marlins, it's 50-50. I could easily see them, being an 86-76 team, but I could easily see them being a 70-92 team. It's really it's a hit or miss. So right now, I think the Marlins had a pretty good offseason, considering their rebuild has kind of been going on for quite some time now, and they're kind of just filibustering it. Hopefully, with how the rest of the division is, they could try and be a little bit more aggressive. They got a great farm system. I get that. But still, they, in my opinion, could have done a little bit more just to kind of, I get it. They're a small market team, but still. So probably going to give them a C-.
One thing that they really have to count on a bounce back from is Jorge Soler, my guy. And Avisel Garcia, who did not perform last year after coming home from Milwaukee. One of those two guys has to bounce back. That's somebody that you need to elevate your lineup. Jacob Stallings, you can kind of set aside that his age, he's not going to provide the pop that he used to be in his heyday in Pittsburgh. You can understand that. John Birdie, you want him stealing bases. Luis Arias, you want him getting on base. But at some point, the power is going to have to come from somebody. And it can't always be Jazz. It can't always be Gene Segura, contact merchant. It can't always be Joey Wendell, who's not really known as what's good further. He says, I'll say how he does. Go Birds. No go birds in here. But good to hear from you, man. Uh, I lost my whole train of thought. They're a team, as you said, that's just been filibustering their rebuild. They keep changing ownerships because no one will fully commit to what they need. But as I said about the Diamondbacks earlier, I'm going to say the same thing here. Like, this has got to be the team that's going to benefit the most from a balanced schedule. Something last year, they were like 42 and 41 at one point in the season because they were 12 and 1 against the Washington Nationals. But against everybody else, they were, fill out the rest of the record. This year, they get the Braves less, they get the Mets less, they get the Phillies less. They get teams like the Royals and the Tigers more, teams like the Pirates more, who I think, honestly, the Marlins are probably better than those type of teams. Them and the Diamondbacks, I think, are the two best bad teams in baseball. And but it's got to start from, you got to get guys like Max Meyer and Sixto Sanchez and Yuri Perez healthy. You got to get a year out of some of those guys. You need to have Avisel Garcia or Jorge Soler bounce back. Otherwise, you just got to keep bringing up prospects, guys like Nick Fortes, Joey Mack, who's apparently one of their catcher prospects who they're really high on. You need Brian De La Cruz or Jesus Sanchez to do it over a full season instead of a half year. Like, it's crazy how Brian Anderson went from this 30 home run guy to just being cast away and non-tendered to Milwaukee. It's just, I don't know. Maybe the Don Mattingly ship had kind of run its course. It kind of seemed like that, and I'm sure he's happy to be back in the pinstripes anyway. And this is a team that you'll be wanting to watch a lot in the first half of the season, especially knowing our fanhood ships, Hayden. So speaking of which, we rode the Miguel Rojas trade from LA to Miami. Now we're moving up to Milwaukee with Brian Anderson for the Milwaukee Brewers. Hayden, take it away.
Yeah, Milwaukee Brewers, a team that had another interesting offseason to say.
I think I like what they did, honestly. Sneaky.
Didn't really do much through free agency, but did a lot of stuff through trades. They did acquire Hunter Renfroe via trade from the Anaheim Angels. They acquired William Contreras via trade from the Atlanta Braves. They acquired Jesse Winker and Abraham Turo via trade. And my apologies, they did not acquire Hunter Renfroe. They traded him away, is what I meant to say. So disregard that. But yeah, essentially, the big moves when it came to the trade was Jesse Winker, Abraham Turo, and William Contreras. So I think those are probably going to be the three big moves for them. Didn't really extend anyone, didn't add anyone. In terms of losses, they lost Taylor Rogers, Brad Boxberger, Chase Peterson, Omar Narvaez, Andrew McCutchen, and Trevor Gott. So, once again, like the Marlins, the Brewers didn't sign a single free agent and have yet to extend any guys on their current roster. Also stated, unlike, some of the moves the Marlins made, it also definitely goes the same for the Brewers. Like I said, Brewers are in a tough spot with that division. They're on the verge of, are they going to be competitive or are they just going to call it and rebuild? So, we're going to see how things go there. I would probably give the Brewers a B.
I think I'm on the same boat. Now, I wish I would have done more to protect my own. Like, I would have maybe talked Andrew McCutchen into one more year in Milwaukee. I know maybe the Pirates gave him a call and there was no turning back on that one because he knew his allegiance there. But I would have given guys like Andrew McCutchen and Jace Peterson another year to do what they did in my ball club this year. Milwaukee was a team that they're a much better Miami Marlins team. Really good pitching that is proven, but their offense is iffy. Yelich, that contract was really good at the beginning, and it probably makes the Brewers less willing to spend money than they already did, being that they shovel money out to Yelich. They're seeing how it's turned out, and now they're like, well, crap, we're not going to do it for a single other soul. As you noted, like, Burns and Woodruff are going to be free agents here sooner than later. They already shipped Josh Hader for nothing. Devin Williams is now the full-time closer. And they lost some depth in that bullpen this year. It's not like they still have the guys like Pyumps and Boxberger and Devin Williams behind Josh Hader. Not anymore. It's a little bit more bare back there. I mean, they're a team that's going to be able to figure it out throughout the course of a season. Colton Wong, I've always thought, is like one of the most weird players in baseball. Like you never know if he's truly overrated or underrated. And he's very similar to Ozzy Albies, so maybe that hits home to me a little bit. But they shipped him off for Jesse Winker, who wasn't a fit in Seattle, and Abraham Toro wasn't a fit in Seattle, a failed prospect for two AOS teams, Houston and Seattle. So he's going to get a chance. Of course, they were also a big winner in the Sean Murphy Atlanta deal. We were able to give them William Contreras for pretty much nothing. Still very surprised the Braves didn't try to get back like an Eric Lauer or an Aaron Ashby, some lefty guy in return, being that all our lefty depth is gone, and we don't know about some of our back end rotation. But that's a story for another day. I do like what they did in hindsight. A team that needed offense, like they snuck by our eyes that they added Jesse Winker, Brian Anderson, and William Contreras, like three guys that are going to be able to do more than what the lineup did last year. No more Lorenzo Cain weighing it down. No more Omar Narvaez weighing it down. So you like that aspect of things. You still got Rowdy Tellez. If he's able to keep up his production, like that's going to be an ultimate good signing for them in the long term. They got him from Toronto. Second base, I'm sure, is an open competition. Shortstop, you got Willie. Third base, Arias. That's another guy you need a little bit more out of for sure. Catcher, Contreras is back there. And they're going to have to ride the pine with that. It's going to take a minute for him to get used to things, but if he does, it could work wonders for them. They don't have to pay him for like 4+ years. Woodruff, Peralta, Burns, Lauer, they're there for at least the next couple of years. The bullpen is still 3 or 4 deep. They're going to add some others that we don't know of, just like Tampa, just like Oakland, and they'll be just fine. So I don't know if they did enough to retool for the playoffs because of the scheduling format. If they still face the Pirates and the Reds 40 times, I'd be like, sure. And the Cubs didn't tool as much as they did, including taking some from Milwaukee. I'd probably be a little bit more higher in Milwaukee. Or I think it's going to be a year I think they'll be better than what they were last year, but I think it's going to be a very similar outcome where it's going to come right down to the wire if they're going to sneak in or not. It's going to take the right pieces to be moving at the end of the season. Do you have any other parts you want to say? Okay. And you gave the monologue for them, right? Okay. Let's see. Going to the Philadelphia Phillies. Let's see what team this is. Our first NL. Well, I guess we talked about the Marlins, but the biggest rival for both of our squads. This is team 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Team 8 of 13, and then we get to our two squads. So let's see. The reigning National League champion, Philadelphia Phillies, added Trey Turner and Taijuan Walker this offseason, and Matt Strom. So their bullpen got even better. It was one of their weaknesses last year, but they extended Dominguez, they extended Alvarado, they kept Corey Knebel for another year. At least I'm pretty sure they did. They're giving flyers to former closers in Gregory Soto and Craig Kimbrell. They like Andrew Painter and Bilotti to be a long relief guy now that Zach Eflin's out of there, and I think Tampa saw a lot in that guy, so I understand Philly not wanting to bite the bullet there. But I mean, you talk about how deep of a lineup was that team was. Like they were 11 deep as a team last year, and they added the best shortstop in baseball. Like I think him and Correa are right there at 1 and 2, 1A and 1B. And dude, it's gonna be a bloodbath in the NL East. Like honestly, I know Harper is gonna miss half the season again, but he did this year, and the team is automatically going to be better than what it was. I think they got better defensively too. Like the two biggest weaknesses for them last year were defense and bullpen. Bullpen we just addressed. Starting rotation, you got Wheeler, you got Nola, and you got Walker and Ranger Suarez. Or not Walker. Taijuan Walker and Ranger Suarez in your back half. You get a good enough guy, a good enough starts from a guy like Andrew Painter, like your rotation is fully set. Or they could find somebody else within the trade market to pick up 5 starts if they want to give Andrew Painter more time or convert him into something else. I completely understand that. A sneaky bench, though. Like, they still got guys like Mundo Sosa and Garrett Stubbs off the bench, 2 guys that were pretty good for the Phillies last year in limited role. You got the best catcher in baseball, in my opinion, in JT Realmuto. Hoskins and Bohm. they're always good enough. They seem to come through when it matters. I wouldn't say they're elite ball players, but they're not scrubs, that's for sure. They got rid of the dead weight and Segura and Didi Gregorius, and they replaced that with Trey Turner, and of course the second year of Bryson Stott. I almost called him Gavin Lux there for a second. And Schwarber, Castellanos, Brandon Marsh is a nice glove for them to have in center field. I'm sure that they still got Dalton Guthrie off the bench because they traded Maton and Vierling and all those guys. But honestly, I think I pretty much named the whole team. I got to give it an A+ offseason. The NL champs got better in a division that's really, really good. It makes me a little nervous, Hayden. Hope Mitch is listening. He's like, ooh.
Yeah, the Phillies definitely made some moves this offseason, no doubt about it. Like you said, Trey Turner, big move considering, the Phillies defense has been, of question lately. Brings in a table setter into that lineup. We saw a lot of time last year where the Phillies would hit these solo shots from Harper, from Schwarber. And, now you add Turner, a guy who's a great table setter. He'll get on base and, let Harper and Schwarber and, the other guys in that lineup, drive him in with the long ball or doubles or whatever. So the Turner move was great, great defensively, great speed. He could offer a lot, steal bases, above average defense, above average offensively. So, yeah, great move when it came to Turner. Obviously, Taijuan Walker probably is going to replace Syndergaard. So we'll see how Walker goes. I'm not like, oh, is this a great move? Walker will, he'll pitch 3 great starts and then he'll be horrible for the next 3. We could tell you all about second half Taijuan Walker. So, yeah, see where that goes. And then obviously the Matt Graham move to replace Brett Hand. I think that's probably a little bit better there, considering Hand is a guy who I don't think is a very consistent guy. I think this year he'll probably have a rough year. So, like you said, you lost Syndergaard, you lost Kyle Gibson, Robertson, Knievel, Eflin, Hand, Segura, but you made up for it. I would say the Phillies did more good than harm. And considering, they got there the World Series last year with that lineup and you just added Turner. So, honestly, I'm going to give them an A flat. I think they had a good offseason.
Do you think that all 3 teams in the East are going to make it into the playoffs? Like, are the Braves, the Mets, and the Phillies all locks? None of them will miss the playoffs.
Yeah. We saw it last year. I think we'll see it again.
And, of course, the Dodgers and the Padres are there. And if the Cardinals clinch, it's going to be teams like San Fran and Milwaukee and Chicago that are going to be fighting for that spot. Or if teams like Miami or Arizona improve, I don't really think there's any worth in mentioning anybody else. But trying to make us some time here. That's pretty much it for the Phillies. I think we covered pretty much anything. Pirates, honestly, I like what they did this offseason. I don't think we have to go over everything for them if you don't want to, Hayden. They basically said, you know what? We're going to keep with our youth, and we're going to get bridge gaps for the players that are not in our youth. There's still a swirling controversy on if Ryan Reynolds is going to be a Pirate or not long term. If I'm the Pirates, I'm paying him. I would have traded this man 2 or 3 years ago to get the prospects that are currently in AAA, AA together then instead of trading him now. They got our boy Connor Joe, G-Man Choi, Carlos Santana. They lost Ben Gamble to the Rays, and that's honestly a funny pickup for the Rays. It's like a delayed trade. G-Man Choi to Pittsburgh, Ben Gamble to Tampa Bay. Austin Hedges is going to be a veteran catcher to be able to help that young staff. But you need more out of your young guys. You need more out of O'Neal Cruz, Brian Hayes, Jack Sawinski. I'm pretty sure they already cut ties on Michael Chavis just because of how atrociously bad he was that year. And honestly, it wasn't a bad original signing for him in Pittsburgh. Guys like him and Ben Gamble to fill out that lineup. Of course, Vogelback's now a Met, so he's no longer a Pittsburgh Pirate. Trying to think if there's anybody else of significance. Youth-wise, at least, and I'm not really thinking anything. It's really just Brian Reynolds and Sawinski, O'Neal Cruz to Brian Hayes. I know they drafted somebody on the right side of the infield like 2 years ago, so maybe if he has a great summer, you see him at some point, and we'll find out who that name is within the next 4 months. But Oh yeah, Rich Hill's also an interesting signing. A reliever, or not a reliever, a veteran starter to kind of relieve all of your young guys that they're trying to groom. Um, I think I got the Reds on this part, and I got the Pirates on this part, and that's where their meeting is right now. I think the Pirates are the better team, but trajectory, I think the Pirates are like a year or two away from being good. If the owner has to spend for that, I don't know if he will, but if the owner spends, they're a year or two away if Milwaukee implodes of being right there with Chicago. If they keep things afloat in St. Louis, while the Reds are going to continuously going to be on this Rockies path and just keep getting worse. Anything you got about the pirate ships? I mean, Andrew McCutcheon being back is cool. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they had a couple free agent add-ons, like you said, Vince Velasquez, Andrew McCutcheon, Carlos Santana, Austin Hedges. They brought in a couple guys like G-Man Choi, Connor Joe. Similar, thing with the past. Small market team, small payroll, cheap owner who wasn't really willing to spend a whole lot. Um, but I think they, brought in some average guys who I think can definitely, be some big and significant contributors for them in 2023. Definitely have a lot of young guys coming through, and they brought in a couple veterans to kind of, coach some of these younger guys. Also, the Red Chill signing, I think, was an interesting move. So, not super crazy, but I'll give them a C plus. C plus.
I'd agree. Here's a fun one. A small market turned big market due to James Preller. They kind of panicked the other day, gave Machado another 11-year, $350 million contract. So if he does end up retiring as a San Diego Padre and plays the length of the contract, he would have made 16 years of revenue worth up to $500 million. Because it's 11 years, 350 plus the 150 out of the 10 for 300. That's insanity, dude. And you want to tell us what else the frickin' Friars did this offseason? Well, that's a fun term. Frickin' Friars. Who am I, Tom Grossi? Soldier?
My fault. I don't know if you were going to say something because I know we've been having Mike delay. Yeah, Padres had really only one, I guess, kind of one big outside addition, and that was Xander Bogaerts. Like you said, they extended Manny Machado. A deal that we'll get into a little bit more later, but definitely something to bring up when it comes to the offseason. In terms of free agent losses, I mean, you lost Josh Bell, Sean Manaea, Mike Clevenger, Pierce Johnson, Brandon Drury, Will Myers, and Jurickson Profar. So, not anything too horrible. I mean, you have a lot of guys who, down the line in future off seasons, they're going to continue growing their farm. Maybe next off season they extend Soto. Padres have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of future going on. Definitely could be in that contention for that number one NL West division spot. And I think definitely with some good strides and certain players get hot, I think it's certainly possible. But I really do like the Xander Bogaerts signing. I think that's a good move considering you don't really know what's going on with Tatis.
Now they have Machado locked up too. It's like,
yeah. So Padres, I don't think they had a horrible offseason, so I'd give them a B plus. My fault. B plus with their expectations.
I'd go A plus. Especially if they find a freaking way to extend Juan Soto to spring training, which they're apparently in talks of. If they can extend Blake Snell and Juan Soto over the lengths of these contracts, they still have a farm system, dude. Like, they still have position player and good pitching prospects to round out for trade value or to fill out the roster. But just talk about the goodies of the middle infield goodies that the Padres have. All-star Jake Cronenworth, former All-Star Fernando Tatis Jr., All-Star Manny Machado, All-Star Xander Bogaerts. Ho-Seon Kim has been a good ball player in places he's went. I'm not absolutely sure who's going to be playing first base for them this year because, I mean, who knows? They could still go back out and get Jurickson Profar if they really need it.
Yeah.
They were able to re-up Suarez, Nick Martinez, and Yu Darvish. They already re-upped Musgrove as well. They still got guys behind the big three if they lock up Snell that have futures. And they still got a really good shortstop prospect in Jackson Merrill. He might be the odd man out. So if I'm the Padres, I'm finding trade value for him, and I'm finding like a couple of years of bullpen usage out of a trade like that, or I'm shedding some salary to get another starting pitcher in case you can't extend Blake Snell. And apparently Padre fans were like, F it, extend Soto and let's go get Ohtani this offseason. I don't think that's the case. And I think if Ohtani's staying on the West Coast, I think he's banking on the Japanese billionaire to buy the Angels for him to re-sign. Otherwise, it looks like he's a Dodger. Because he's not going to, I guess he could go to San Francisco. He's definitely not going to Oakland. So that's that campaign. But yeah, dude, I think with the Gavin Lux ACL injury, as unfortunate as it is, it probably boosts the Padres a little bit more into the favorite role. Because now the look at the Dodgers right side of the infield with Vargas and Rojas, and you got the Padres with Fernando and Wright, because you got Xander and Machado there with Cronenworth. Maybe Ha-Seong Kim DHs for them some. You got Soto in left. Grisham in center. Will Myers available off the bench still. I'm pretty sure they still have Austin Nola and Jorge Alfaro. Maybe they have a catcher prospect I don't know aware of. Maybe one of them left. Not absolutely sure of that here. But yeah, you still got Snell, Musgrove, Darvish, and a plethora of young guys behind him. This team might be the number one seed in the National League, based on talent alone. And it's not because they're spending a lot of money, because of course, as you know, we saw with what the Braves and the Mets did last year, two completely different philosophies. They took each other right down to the end of the wire. I just think the Padres have done it already for a couple of years. They didn't build the core all together at once like the Mets did. Like they got pieces on top of pieces, and they built the chemistry, and they kept the guys they want, the ones they wanted out. They've spent more money and got upgrades. That's where they're at. And now that the Dodgers have taken a step down, I wouldn't be surprised if they won the NL West by a handful. Not like 10 games, not by like 20 like the Dodgers did last year, but maybe early prediction. I think the Padres won the West by like 4 or 5 games, clinched within like a week. I'm sure there's something else up there you want to talk about, because you saw them a lot last year, and it's a team that the Mets are going to have to probably be in battle for. Is there someone that you think we glazed over too much, or just another aggression position of address? Aggression.
Yeah, and Padres are a pretty good team. They have a good lineup, constructed, good pitching staff, a lot of young talent on the rise. I wouldn't, Machado can definitely go off this year. Tatis coming back, he can go off. So it's gonna be an exciting year in San Diego, no doubt.
And they kept their announcer Don Orsillo, so Friar friendly. So only a couple teams left here, Hayden, before we get to our squads. We got the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Nationals. This is probably them and the Cardinals are most of the bulk of what we're talking about. Unless we want to have deep in depth Dom Smith, Josiah Gray talks for when we get to Washington. This list is old. It shows Carlos Correa and Aaron Judge, so that's no. But what I do know is they also added guys like Mitch Haniger, Jock Peterson they brought back, Michael Conforto. So they really rounded out their outfield. And I do want to hear your opinion here on Michael Conforto here in a second, on what you think he'll bring to San Diego this year if he's healthy, like just what you expect, if you'll be rooting for him. I do want to hear your in-depth opinion on him. They probably could have done a little bit better in the pitching department. Like Logan Webb took a step back last year. They only brought in Ross Stripling. They let Rodon go to the Yankees for nothing, no qualifying offer. So if this team is in contention, they're going to have to find a way to get starting pitching fast, and that's probably going to be a waiver claim at the end of spring training, a trade deadline pickup just to round out the rotation. Because if you look at what they had a couple of years ago, when they had Gosman, they had Alex Wood, they had Desclafani, all those guys are gone. It's now Logan Hopp and who? Ross Stripling is there too? That screams mediocrity to me. And that's what the Giants are trying to avoid. And they made moves to get better, but I feel like they got worse in other areas where it's like a teeter-totter thing with Gabe Kapler. You never know.
Yeah, I mean, right now the Giants, Definitely had I would say, an underrated offseason. I mean, yeah, they didn't get Judge, they didn't get Correa. Like you said, Mitch Haniger, good bat. Michael Conforto. I mean, Conforto hasn't really been this. Conforto's had an interesting career. He's really only
My
had
guy
two
Luke
good.
Jackson too. Slider
And
man. They got him.
he's really only had. Conforto's really only had like 2 good years. That really is like, oh my god, he's a good ball player. And that's 2017 and 2019. Otherwise, he was an average ball player who would not be able to go the opposite way, hit into the shift, strike out, and get a lot of walks. And a lot of ground balls too. A lot of ground balls to the third baseman. So yeah, I mean, we'll see the approach on what Conforto takes. It's a new setting. He didn't play at all last year. He struggled in 2021. Had a great 2020 COVID shortened season. So Michael Conforto, it's definitely going to be a guy to keep an eye out on. Although it's a gamble to an extent, Conforto, sure, but I still think they definitely added some nice bats to their lineup. I agree. I think the pitching department definitely is going to be of concern. Yeah, you're not facing the Dodgers and Padres lineup, but you're going to be facing other lineups in baseball like the Astros more, like the Yankees more, and that's where it's going to be a concern. So I like the moves they made. However, they didn't really address pitching a whole lot. So I'm probably going to give them a B-.
It looks like they do still have Anthony Desclafani, and we did miss their pickup of Shamanaya, who was terrible for San Diego last year, but maybe him being back in the Bay Area helps him a little bit. So if you look at the full rotation, it's probably Logan Webb, Ross Stripling, Shamanaya, and Anthony Desclafani. Not terrible, but it still needs a little bit of help, that's for sure. Bullpen isn't that bad, though. You got Camilo Doval, who's getting the keys. You got both the Rogers brothers. I think they're going to do good things out there together. I really like the Luke Jackson signing for them as someone who watched them the last couple of years. Gregory Santos is another one of those White Sox cast-off relievers. It looks like that they're taking a shot at. They cut their losses with Brandon Belt and Tommy La Stella. They still got late night Lamont. One more year out of Brandon Crawford. So they definitely need Joey Bart to take a step up, though. Like, he's kind of in that same boat as like the Spencer Torkelsons of the world, where it's been like, okay, a rough year or two. And I guess you can put Kellenic in that boat too. Let's see you do something now. And I know Giants fans, after loving Posey to death like they had for all those years, they're begging to see a better bounce back out of Joey Bart this season. Do you have them above 500 or over 500 with this current roster construction? No additions, no injuries, just as they are.
I think they're literally a sub 500. I could see them like 80, 82, 80, 81, 81. I mean, they're right at 500, in my opinion.
I mean, yeah, I'll go a little over just because there's going to be nights where it's a Friday night sellout and they're going to rally behind them. And it's a tough place to play when it's a crowd like that. So I could see there's going to be some occasions where a rival's in town or it's early in season and they're not too low on the team yet. Not everybody's been traded, no injury concerns. So I could see maybe them having a good spring and riding that to an over 500 record. But yeah, as you said, I don't know if they'll be able to get what they were in 2021. Dodgers fans warned us. They said that they're very fluky. They won 3 World Series in 5 years, but were very bad in years not beyond that. And the Dodgers won 160-game season, but they were consistent, winning products, and they promised that would be the case. And yeah, the Giants have fickled back to mediocrity. Lightning in the pan is gone, and the Dodgers and the Padres have not left. 2 more before we get to dive deep on our own squads, Hayden. Bringing it back to where we first started. Whoa, that was almost a word I can't say on YouTube anymore. Because of my 30 hours and no sleep self. The St. Louis Cardinals. The biggest addition of this offseason is the new play-by-play announcer, Chip Carey. No, I'm just kidding. Hayden, tell us how St. Louis did. I'm very high on.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals, I agree with you. I think they're a respectable ball club, and they've had a team who's been very successful over the past decades. Mm-hmm. The biggest offseason move they made was signing catcher Wilson Contreras. Of course, Yadier
What
retired.
a replacement, too.
So
what a replacement for Yadier, honestly. So
crazy. You have Wilson Contreras. They did extend Adam Wainwright. So I guess you still have one of the core three in there. You did lose Jose Quintana and Corey Dickerson to free agency, and you lost Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina due to retirement. So I guess for the nostalgia there, it's going to be interesting to see them not on the field. But once again, I still think the Cardinals have a great lineup. Pitching wise, they got a decent rotation. I mean, maybe could have went after a little bit of more pitching. For that, back end of the rotation, number 4, number 5 start. A guy like Carlos Rodon, I feel could have been nice, a nice lefty there. I have a friend who's a big Cardinals fan, and he expressed a lot of interest in Carlos Rodon, but fortunately,
I feel like every contender had interest in him, though.
Yeah,
like you had interest in him, the Braves had interest in him, everybody.
Yeah, so I would say, Cardinals, I still think they're the NL Central Division champions and favorites. So right now, I'm going to give them a B+.
I think this division is going to be the easiest pencil in. Because the Dodgers and the Padres, the Giants, you're not sure. It could be really either LA or San Diego. That's a toss-up. The NL East, there's 3 teams. You have no idea will continue to be the Braves, where the money can finally catch up with the talent. AL Central, who knows? Everybody thought it'd be the White Sox as a shoe-in last year, but Cleveland and Minnesota came out of nowhere, and they did things, and Chicago also did things. I guess the Astros, but that one is kind of a given, even though St. Louis or Seattle and Texas are in that division. So I think the most boring fill-in is probably the Cardinals just to win the NL Central, unfortunately. But, they have a very respectable fan base, a city that knows how to win. I know they lost the Rams to LA about, almost a decade ago now, and the Blues won a couple years ago for them. But, yeah, there's not a lot else that goes on during the summer in St. Louis other than barbecues and Cardinals games. And it's a very popular spot. People love the history and the prestige of that franchise, and Busch Stadium is one of the nicest facilities there is in the league. I hope I didn't catch that on video. Yeah, I think this team is, if they handle the NL Central right, I wouldn't be surprised if they somehow snuck up to the number 1 seed because of their balanced schedule. So let's see. We got one more squad to talk about before Hayden and I, at probably about the 90-minute mark, deep dive in on the Braves and the Mets. Let's talk about those 2019 World Series champion Washington Nationals. Hayden, what's there to really talk about with those boys? I think the over-under for them is like 59.5. I'm taking the over still.
Yeah, Nationals are
10 games a month.
Nationals are probably going to be in last place most likely. Made a couple free agent moves. Trevor Williams, nice arm. Third baseman, Jeimer Candelario. Okay. Extended Sean Doolittle and Ramasco Ramirez. So kind of going after that bullpen depth, I guess. Kind of interesting considering they're focusing on the future and I guess kind of day-to-day things. But, that's how it goes. You lost Nelson Cruz, Luke Voigt, Joe Ross, and Cesar Hernandez. Kind of expected. Like I said, there's really not much to talk about when it comes to the Nationals offseason. They were not projected to do a lot, of course, as they are not. I guess the biggest thing is Steven Strasburg obviously is hurt again, and that contract has been a disaster. So, yeah, really not much to say about the Nationals. I'm going to give them a D.
I think they could have done a little bit better at the trade deadline instead of just putting Bell and Soto in the same trade. Like, I'm surprised they didn't entertain the ability of guys like Nelson Cruz, guys like Cesar Hernandez. They pretty much ended with Luke Voigt in their back pocket because there was no other suitor. Some of their pitching prospects are probably learning from Corbin and Strasburg, and it's probably hurting them as of right now because you're not seeing a lot of growth out of the guys like Josiah Gray. I'm currently on Google to try to figure out the exact name on a couple of them. I mean, I like some of the position players that they have. Like Lane Thomas was a good pickup for them a couple years ago. He's been really well in his role. Victor Robles kind of came back to what he was pre World Series last year. So those are two good outfield pieces. Of course, no Juan Soto in the lineup, no Josh Bell in the lineup makes it much easier to face a team like that. Keibert Ruiz continues to get better every year. As you said, they're giving guys chances like Dom Smith to play. Guys like Jamer Candelario. The Sean Doolittle one, I think, is just because he's a lifelong national. He probably just wanted to stay. I think Davey Martinez is probably going to get canned at some point this year, and it's nothing because of him. It's probably just going to be because of the team that's going to be put with him, and with the new ownership coming in, new general managership, GM office coming in, they're probably going to want to get their own guy. And I'm looking at their top prospects here, Hayden. Cade Cavalli is projected to be really good. A right-handed pitcher, number 58 overall. Brady House has great shortstop potential. You put him and C.J. Abrams on the same field, and you might have a little bit of a future middle infielder duo there. I'm trying to see if there's anybody else to mention. They took Elijah Green at the number 5 overall pick last year. So I think they also have like a top 5 pick this year, so they'll be able to nail another draft class. The over-under I did here is 59.5. Would you take the over on Washington to be able to win 60 games? That's like 10 games a month. Not seeing the East as much.
Yeah, I think they could probably win at most 65.
About that same ballpark, yeah. But enough talk about those guys. They let everybody go, and they're in their first rebuilding stage of their life since being in Washington D.C. As you said, the last time they were in this part of their life was the Montreal Expos. Okay, so since we have the Braves and the Mets, do you want us to just have like a little soap opera, or do you want us to make comments on one another's off seasons? How would you want to go about with this?
I say maybe if you want to start off, obviously the Mets had a bigger off season. Maybe if you want to, I'll kind of go over the Mets off season. You could have a couple minutes to respond, and then you can go over the Braves, and I'll have a couple minutes to respond. Kind of like what we were doing, I guess.
Okay, we'll jump to the Mets first. I had you guys last because you had more there to talk about, but sure, the floor is yours. I'm scrolling up to it right now. Take it away, Mets with Hayden.
So, New York Mets had a phenomenal offseason, killer offseason.
Scary.
Steve Cohen is making all the moves to say. In terms of the add-ons for the New York Mets, obviously they spent quite a lot of money. I believe I want to say they spent somewhere, what was it, $500 million in terms of the salary. So they definitely surpassed the luxury tax, and Cohen does not care about that. But in terms of the additions, they added Justin Turner. They added Justin Verlander, the reigning Cy Young. So obviously he'll slot into that rotation nice. The Japanese phenom, right-handed pitcher Kodai Senga, right-handed pitcher David Robertson, left-handed pitcher Jose Quintana, catcher Omar Narvaez. They made some interesting trades. They acquired Alicia Hernandez and Jeff Brigham. And then, of course, they had some extensions. They extended Edwin Diaz to a 3-year deal. They extended Brandon Nimmo to an 8-year deal. And then, of course, they extended Jeff McNeil, the GOAT, the legend. Of course, I love Jeff McNeil. They extended him to a 4-year deal with the possibility of a 5th year. So, by far,
team friendly too.
By far a phenomenal offseason. I mean, the Mets already having one of the highest payrolls in baseball, $425 million spent this offseason. I mean, what a phenomenal offseason. I mean, yeah, you lost Jacob deGrom, you lost Chris Bassett, you lost Taijuan Walker, Trevor Williams, Dolly Rodriguez. I forgot you also did resign Adam Ottavino, so mention him there too. And then you also lost Lugo, May, Gibbons, and Naquin. But out of all those guys, I think the only really player that fans, I guess, to an extent, were kind of like, oof, were Jacob deGrom. No one really cared for Bassett back much. Same for Walker. Williams would have been a nice guy to return. Trevor Williams would have been a nice guy to return. Otherwise, those are really the only two guys that I'm kind of bummed left is deGrom and Trevor Williams, I would say. But you know what? When it comes to deGrom, you countered. You lost deGrom, and what did you do? Steve Cohen said, "All right, let's go out there and make the moves." And you signed Justin Verlander. I'm not going to sit here and make the argument who's better, deGrom or Verlander, but at least Verlander goes out there every 5 days. At least he's proved himself in the last 3 years. The last time Jacob deGrom went out and pitched every 5th day was in 2019. That was quite some time ago. That was almost 3 years ago. Times have changed. So the Mets had a phenomenal offseason. That's not even the word to use. They made all the moves. They did what they needed to do. You lost deGrom. Well, what did you do? You fix your rotation. I think Verlander, it's a better move than deGrom. I think Senga has more versatility than a guy like Taijuan Walker or Chris Bassett long term. Continue to figure out your left-handed pitching shortage. You brought in Jose Quintana. You obviously got rid of James McCann. I forgot to mention that. You finally traded away James McCann for a player to be named later. And it was about time you got rid of James McCann. And you replaced him with Omar Narvaez. Like we said, I think Narvaez, I want to say a 2-3 year deal at max. Kind of that placeholder until Francisco Alvarez is the everyday catcher. And I say every day because, Alvarez isn't going to jump on this roster and be the number one catcher for the Mets. No, he'll probably be a backup most likely. So, yeah, the Mets by far had a great offseason. We're going to see in spring training if guys like Brett Beatty and Mark Vientos and Ronnie Mauricio, what they're going to do if they have the possibility of making this roster and to only expand on. But once again, to echo, I think my favorite, like I said, in terms of the add-ons, once again, you added Justin Verlander, Kodai Senga, David Robertson, Jose Quintana, Omar Narvaez, Adam Ottavino, Jeff Brigham, Alicia Hernandez, and then, of course, you made extensions with Edwin Diaz, Brandon Nimmo, and Jeff McNeil. So by far, I think this is, and biased aside, I'm a Mets fan, and I've had Phillies fans, Yankees fans. People don't even care for baseball, and they text me like, wow, Hayden, your team makes so many moves. And these people are illiterate with baseball. So, honestly, I think this is my first A+ of it, and as I think it should be. If I can give an A++++, I would. I think this was a better offseason than last year's, and last year's you definitely did a lot too. So kudos to the Mets, kudos to Steve Cohen. You also brought in Carlos Beltran for the assistant general manager. So, maybe he'll have a, manager role for the Mets or in baseball down the line. So good to see him back involved. Once again, a phenomenal offseason for the New York Mets. And I'm walking into March, walking into April opening day, and I'm satisfied. I would say the only two, upsetting is deGrom. And, I would have liked Trevor Williams to come back, but, at the end of the day, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Offensively, you brought back everyone you wanted to. You brought back Diaz. You brought back Nimmo. So super, super pumped. And, the Mets get an A+. Give Blake a couple minutes to figure out all the elite things I just said. But the Mets had a phenomenal offseason, no doubt.
They have the GDP of like 8 different countries as that payroll, and it's probably going to go up and up the next couple of years. It's crazy. For the same amount of money that you lost to deGrom, I think it was probably $1 million in exchange, if anything, difference-wise. You replaced with Quintana, who had a really good year. Senga for 5 years, and even if he's this year, let's say the forkball is not fooling as many hitters as you want. Let's say his velocity isn't as high as he expects it to be. Over the 5 years, and you let me know if I'm lagging because I can kind of see a little bit of it. Over the 5 years, he's only going to get better right? So I really like that signing for you guys long term. And the Verlander one honestly makes a lot of sense too, for what it's worth, being that he had a little bit of red lights flashing last year at the end of the year. He is older. You're already paying Scherzer a lot of money, and he's basically the same age, paying him the same amount of AAV. Honestly, if you get one really good year out of Verlander and you get like a 3.8 ERA for him next year, it's probably all you're wanting. Um, because you still got Scherzer. I mean, I don't really know how your starting pitching prospect pool is behind them. I mean, you'll probably just be able to pull in another guy if necessary with Cohen money in the future. But it seems like I heard today that you guys have the number 5 farm system in baseball. On Gary Cohen was talking about it today. Of course, our game was broadcasted only on SNY, so I heard your guys' announcers talk about the Phillies. They talk Braves. They talk to everybody. And Ronnie Mauricio's having a really good spring training. From what I'm hearing, all the highlights I'm seeing. I really like the Kevin Parada pick that you guys made out of Georgia Tech. And honestly, the Omar Narvaez sign short term is perfect. It's a bridge gap. Him and Nito get their time out of the way by the time Alvarez and Parada are 1 and 2. And by the time Brett Beatty is that guy, the Eduardo Escobar contract's probably going to be up. And if you want to bring him back to a bench role or whatever, then you have options there. The Carlos Correa thing didn't work out, but I think it might be the best case for you guys long term, because you still got a guy named freaking Francisco Lindor and another dog, Jeff McNeil, on the other side, a top 10 first baseman at worst in Pete Alonso. I'd assume you're probably going to bring back Canna or Marte for one more contract after this, whoever has the better ending to their deals. Diaz got the money he deserved. I don't know I think it's hard to say that Diaz is going to be as good as he was last year, because the dude was legitimately perfect. I think he said he had like 1 or 2 blown saves, and the 2 blown saves he had weren't like, oh my God. It was like, oh, damn, that's unfortunate. 4th pitch and 3rd time in 4 days. We already won the series. Like it didn't end up costing you guys in the end. Sure, the Braves won the division, but we had the same amount of wins. Yeah, man. I think it's another team that's going to be set off for a good start. I wouldn't be surprised if the Braves are playing from behind again because of our April schedule, and I'm very afraid for that. I don't think we can keep doing the same thing every year. So, yeah. I mean, people say the Mets met. I know that's an argument that you won't fully live for, and I understand it. I don't like the 28-3 argument as a Falcons fan myself, but I do believe this: talent and money can outpay and outplay mistakes, and that's what the Mets are doing right now. Trying to think if there's anything else that you'd want me to hear. Yeah, Lugo, Diaz, or Lugo, May, and Ottavino. You brought back the best one, in my opinion, and that was Ottavino. So it seems like any guy that's worth anything to the team, Cohen is making sure to bring back, and that's a good thing for you guys. Do have one thing, though, to share with the people at home.
The NL East standings, you don't need me to tell you. The NL East is over. That's right. It's a wrap. No one is touching the Mets. Tweet me the hate all you want about the jinx. Nonsense. The Mets will be National League Eastern Division champs, and I don't even think the Braves are going to challenge them. The Phils, please, you've seen them. No one else is 500. What are you worried about, Mets fans? The Mets are only going to get better, and even if the Braves do turn around, it will be too late. The NL East is over.
That's one guy you got to keep away from a microphone next year. That fueled the Braves directly as we transition to the 2021 World Series champion Atlanta Braves. I wouldn't say they got worse this offseason, but they didn't get better. But granted, they didn't need to do a lot. Our philosophy is different than the Mets and the Phillies. We're not like John Middleton and Steve Cohen. We're going to pay everybody. I would have loved to pay Dansby. I would have loved to have made Vaughn Grissom this Chris Taylor type role where he can play middle infield, some outfield, DH, and be a quality player wherever he goes. I would have loved to have locked up our shortstop long term and also found a spot for Vaughn Grissom, because I think that was very much possible. But the Braves thought otherwise. And I'm trusting our ownership, because it was hard to lose Freddie too. And Olsen didn't have a great year last year. But ultimately, we had the best regular season in 20 years. Austin Riley is under the biggest Braves contract of all time, like 10 years, $220-something million, making like 22 annuals kicking in this year. He's a dog. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the next third base Mets killer. It seems like he has a really good stat line against the Mets so far in his career. And for the people that are like, oh, you let your shortstop go. Well, we also got a top 3 catcher in baseball, Sean Murphy. Eddie Rosario was going to bounce back this year. I don't know if he's going to be this 300 hitter he was back in the day in Minnesota, but he's not going to be hitting 180, dropping fly balls left and right. And if he's not good enough to play the outfield, him and Travis d'Arnaud are going to be great platoon DH options. And that reminds me, they finally got replacements for Marcell Ozuna. He's going to be off this team by the end of April, at latest. Eli White, Sam Hilliard, and your guy Kevin Pillar are all outperforming Marcell Ozuna at spring training as of today. Let Jordan Luplow get healthy, and it might be too late for Marcell Ozuna. Eddie Rosario, he's got one more year on his contract and then a team option for the year after. I think he's a lock. He can only go up from what he was last year. He just got eye surgery. He's putting the ball in play, getting base hits here early in spring training. He can be a left fielder, a DH guy. Same thing with Travis d'Arnaud. I'm hearing that he's probably going to be the Charlie Morton catcher. But other than that, it's probably going to be those two guys DHing quite a ton. Olsen's at first. Ozzy's coming back at second. I'm ready to see Ozzy prove some people wrong. Ozzy the last 2 years has been like a 103 WRC plus, and pretty much the same thing OPS plus. Like he's been just above average. And it could be 2 tweaks in his game that would help him tremendously offensively. And that would be A, to maybe stop switch hitting, and B, have better plate vision. He is just like Javier Baez. The dude will swing at anything and everything you throw at him. And if he fixed those 2 little tweaks, he'd be a lot better offensively. Still great defensively, and if he's in your 7 hole, like he's still a scary guy to face. Michael Harris, I don't think they would have paid him the contract if they didn't think that this is who he could be. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in our 2 hole this year. Acuna is also coming back fully healthy. He's talking 40-40, and most times when he's talked his game, he's backed it up. Last year, he didn't really say much, and he only got so far. But, I mean, as I said, I don't know if the Braves got better, but they didn't really need to do much to get better. Like, you still got Spencer Strider, who apparently I don't see him as a top 10 pitcher in baseball. Some people are already producing him as is soon to be. He has the electric stuff of, I don't know. All I know is right now, Max Fried is my ace, and we got 2 more years left to him. And if we don't pay him, that's unfortunate. I'd be willing to trade him in a year and a half just to get something back in return. Kyle Wright just had a 21 season last year. He finally figured it out. There's no reason that he's going to go back to what he was. Mike Soroka should be back by May as well. And he just started up in camp. I think they're not going to rush him to opening day. They've learned their lesson with that too many times. The dude was an ace before he got hurt, and I get that was 3 years ago, but if your former ace is coming back as a 5th, and a lot of these guys haven't seen him before, he's still going to have some nasty stuff. They're not going to bring him up if he's not healthy and ready. You get 1 more year out of Charlie Morton. Everybody loves that. He needs to bring the walks back down, and he needs to bring the home runs back down. But if he can, he'll be a solid enough back of the end rotation. I think most teams would love to have Charlie Morton at the back of the rotation. The bullpen got better, Hayden, and our bullpen was crazy last year. We let go of Kenley Jansen because we knew he was not going to have anything to do with this pitch clock. He led the National League in saves last year, but he also led in blown saves. And Raul Iglesias, who we got over in that trade from the Angels, was a dog. Gave up 2 earned runs in like 23 and change innings in Atlanta, due for like a .8 ERA. He had closing experience with the Reds, was closing with LA before he came over, and we got him for the next 3 years. He has high strikeout stuff, and I love that at the closer position. Our last 3 closers, Will Smith, Luke Jackson, and Kenley Jansen, or I guess Mark Melanson, have not been high strikeout guys. They've been pitch to contact, 93 miles an hour, and that has been very scary with all the base runners they've been giving up. I have a lot more confidence that Iglesias is going to be coming in, pumping 96, missing bats, and giving us, as an Atlanta fan, we can't have scary endings. The Falcons and the Hawks choke too much. We can't have the Braves giving us the same heart attacks, you know? So, yeah, I mean, Kirby Yates and Nick Anderson, if one of those guys clicks, like that's just another solid setup guy sitting in your mid-relief, who at their heyday was a closer. They traded for Joe Jimenez, and I wouldn't be surprised if they extended him because they traded our best position prospect for him in Justin Henry Malloy. Joey Jimenez from the Tigers. Philly's got Gregory Soto. We'll happily take Joey Jimenez. You still got Colin McHugh. You still got AJ Minter. I like the Lucas Lucky move as another lefty because Tyler Matzek's going to be out with Tommy John this year. So yeah, the bullpen is something I'm not worried about. And the rotation is going to keep us in games with Kyle Wright, with Mike Soroka, with Max Fried, with Spencer Strider, with Charlie Morton. So the lineup's good too. I mean, Harris, Acuna, Olsen, Riley, Murphy. So I know that you guys are good and the Phillies are good, but hey, we've won the last 5 years, and I like our squad. So it's going to be a bloodbath down to the end, and I know we'll definitely talk more in depth on the next episode of the Longball podcast, the Eastern preview show, whenever Hayden and I are free at some point next week. Yeah, guys, 3 episodes left before the official opening week podcast. We got East, Central, and West predictions. We did our recaps. Offseason's over. It is now officially regular season baseball here on the Longball podcast. You guys can expect that from here on out pretty much every week. Yeah, it was a great show. First of all, Hayden, I'll let you have any rebuttals like I had for the Mets.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I mean, I don't really think the Braves got any better, but I don't really think they got any worse. Obviously, I mean, I like the Sean Murphy acquisition. Maybe you can give Travis d'Arnaud a little bit more of a DH role, backup catcher. It doesn't hurt. Maybe potentially, I don't know what his contract's looking like, but maybe trade him. I don't know. Nick Anderson also, I think, is a good arm for you guys. I know the Braves. I know, like you said, the Braves kind of have a different philosophy of, how they go about things. I mean, they really have faith in their prospects and they really have trust in their prospects. And, that's good. But, that could always not be the case. And, I definitely think they definitely downgraded at the shortstop position. I think any Braves fan or any baseball fan could say. I mean, I don't really anticipate Vaughn Grisham coming in and, putting up these elite metrics. He may. We'll see. But,
I mean, Ron Washington's been working with him day in and day out. I mean, on the short term, yes, we did get worse. Long term, we don't know yet. But what we can say is catcher-wise, that's another trade-off position where we kept our guy and also improved. That's where that trade-off comes into play.
I'd probably give the Braves. I'd probably give them a B flat.
I mean, another thing is people ruled our farm system off at the beginning of last year, saying the Braves farm system is dead. There's nobody left in it. We just rattled off for 3 of the top 5 Rookie of the Year candidates last year, with the winner, the runner-up, and Vaughn Grissom placed 5th. None of them were top 100. Like, we have faith in the guys like the Jared Schusters, like the Darius Vineses, who's a really nice reliever prospect in the next year or two. We still got Brendan Shoemake. We kept him for the departure of Dansby Swanson. He plays really well to the strengths of Arcia and Grissom. I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the Major League roster. Dylan Dodd. We drafted really well last year, which is crucial. We finally got back in international waters after years, so that's going to help us build this farm system back up as this window starts to close in 7 or 8 years. We'll have the international waters to splash some guys, and if the Braves keep drafting well like they have, I wouldn't be surprised, Hayden, if we're like the next St. Louis Cardinals. We're like, as one window ends, it's just going to keep going. Everything's going to be retooled. And that doesn't mean we'll win every year because the Cardinals haven't. But who says we can't? Like, the Dodgers ran the National League for a decade. The Cardinals ran the National League for a decade. I wouldn't be surprised if it was the Braves' turn. And again, that doesn't mean they win it every year, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were an NLCS World Series team pretty much every 3rd year. And I wouldn't complain about that. As an Atlanta fan, it has been very painful in my life. The Hawks have done nothing in my lifetime except make 2 Eastern Conference Finals that led to a sweep and a Trae Young injury. That was it. And they've done nothing since the most recent one. The Falcons lost the Super Bowl, made the playoffs once since then, lost the Super Bowl in really embarrassing fashion, and have had 5 straight losing seasons since then. So my college teams are in the dirt. The Braves are literally everything I have, for the most part. I mean, I still like the futures for some of my teams, but the Braves are the jewel of the city. They're the best team currently. They're the best team all time historically. And yeah, Atlanta's different in the summer with the Braves, that is for sure. But we thank you guys for watching. It was an honor bringing you guys another coverage of Longball tonight, and we'll see you guys. Hayden, what part next week after this weekend you think you're free for the Eastern prediction shows? That'll definitely have some prep that goes into it, but
yeah, we'll definitely be in contact. I'm having one of my buddies is coming down from the north to stay at school with me for a week, and we're gonna hang out around campus,
Sick.
go to a couple of training games and stuff. So we'll keep in contact when the next stream will be for the for the preview for the season. So yeah, that'll definitely be a fun stream. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, and yeah, listening to Blake and myself's insight. We got a fun year coming up for baseball, and yeah, that's really all I got to say. Let's ride.
Yeah, we'll leave you guys with instead of the outro that Hardcore's given us, we're gonna rock with this.
Visiting pitcher to walk off the field here in Atlanta, because that's what you look at.